ÖQUIST, Professor Emeritus of Umeå University. He became the main secretary of the Natural Sciences Research Council in Sweden in 1993 and became a permanent secretary of the Royal Swedish Academy in Sciences in 2003. He is deeply interested in the distribution of research resources as well as education systems of physics and chemistry. The title of the lecture is The Nobel Prize as a Benchmark for Scientific Quality. Dr. ÖQUIST.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to say that it has really been a pleasure to be part of this HOPE meeting and to talk and discuss with you. You have had many lectures. This is the 10th lectures during the week. I'm afraid that a lot of what I'm saying, particularly in the beginning of my talk, will be a repetition of what you have heard, but I will take the standpoint more from a policy viewpoint, and I think it's important for you, as you enter science, actually to think on science policy. And because as scientists, you also have a role in your countries to talk to politicians and try to help and be involved in setting the science policy of your country. I will, as an introduction, talk about unprecedented challenges to mankind. I will then dwell on how I see the nature of scientific research. I will talk about the Nobel Prizes and how we work to select Nobel laureates. And then I will finish by discussing research environments that facilitate breakthroughs in scientific research. Breakthroughs of the kind that merits for the highest, for the international prizes of the highest distinction. So I start with the challenge, and I think we can say that in our knowledge-based societies of today, we emphasize the use of research and innovation for wealth creation. When we, in this context, talk about growth, we usually think of economic growth, but the challenge goes well beyond that. It's actually about a sustainable future for a growing world population. The global threats, as we have discussed this week, are enormous, with the global change just being global climate change just being one expression of the today increasing and devastating over-exploitation of planet Earth. With its global dimension, it has a magnitude that has never before been experienced by mankind. Today, we don't have the technical or social solutions to these challenges, but I'm pretty sure that it will be societies that emphasize research for new discoveries, for new ideas, and new innovations that will foster the kind of ingenuity that is necessary to find rational solutions to these problems. Societies that will emphasize research and innovation well beyond what we so far have experienced will give us hope for the future. What I will discuss with you today is how we should go about to strengthen our research efforts so we can better exploit the full potential of scientific research. I will argue for a science policy that does not only emphasize research from a utilitarian perspective within established paradigms. I will argue for more of the kind of research that question accepted views and perspectives, research that look in new directions, research that has the potential to open up for new, unforeseen opportunities. This is what we need if our knowledge-based societies shall have a fair chance to successfully deal with present and future global challenges to mankind. During the 90s, I was Secretary General of the Swedish Natural Science Research Council. Every year we published a book on a scientific theme. One year the title was Mathematics, a Useful Tool and a Beautiful Art. In the book, mathematics is defined both as a useful tool and a beautiful art. And this is a definition that I think very nicely summarizes the dual nature of scientific research. It is a useful tool to solve problems, to focus research efforts towards identified social needs for new knowledge with the objective of finding new solutions of technical and social nature. That is what we would say need-motivated or strategic research. Sometimes we have a particular application in mind, and we may use terms as targeted or applied research. But scientific research as a beautiful art emphasizes its more rebellious nature of independence with the freedom to challenge and question established views, to look for new passes into the future, and in that way open up for the new unforeseen opportunities. This kind of research must be given the trust and the freedom to explore and question without any other reason than to open up for new knowledge and understanding. To me, this is a cornerstone in democracy, just in the same way as our free and independent media are cornerstones for democracy. We often name this kind of research blue sky research, curiosity-driven research, or simply basic research. In order to justify the call for more targeted or applied research, one today very often hear that, well, there is no real difference between basic and applied research, and therefore it's more profitable to invest in targeted or applied research rather than in free basic research. This is very often a political view. One has launched the term frontier research to emphasize that both types of research can be of high quality by international standards. I agree that no sharp lines can be drawn between the two types of research, since they are interdependent on each other, and many scientists appreciate to have one foot in each domain. But I think that it blurs the picture not to recognize that over time, target or applied research on one hand and basic research on the other hand, they work with different goals, they have different time perspectives, and therefore the two types of research have different needs when it comes to funding and organization of research. However, I would like to emphasize that these two natures of scientific research are complementary to each other, and neither one of them can in the long term advance without the other. This is extremely important to consider when universities or nations define their research policies and research priorities. Let me also take a somewhat more individual perspective on this issue. Creativity in Time of Space is a book by an author, Gunnar ÖQUIST. He is professor at Lund University in cultural geography. Gunnar ÖQUIST notices that it's the research entrepreneur who with great success leads the more or less targeted or strategic research within established paradigms, while it is the independent research pioneer who demand the freedom to look into new directions with the potential to open up for the unexpected opportunities. Törnqvist also says that from a scientific policy viewpoint, it's much safer to put money on the research entrepreneur than on the research pioneer. The reason is that the entrepreneur is more visible, attracts a broader social response, and his or her work is easy to measure progress, actually month by month. The work of the pioneer is much more risky. It's full of failures, and the significance of the results may not be judged until maybe in a distant future. I think it's fair to say that today it is the pioneers who suffer while the entrepreneur flourishes. Entrepreneurs and pioneers are, of course, extreme caricatures of scientists. But I think that Törnqvist has a point when he emphasizes that they are complementary, as they create the basis for, on one hand, efficiency and productivity, and on the other hand, the genuine creativity, which is a prerequisite for renewing and development in the long term. Törnqvist also argues that research needs to be elitistic, full of uncertainties and risk. And he says that the entrepreneur and the pioneer are both necessary for the progress of scientific research. And in unique cases, the two characters are combined in one and the same individual. Such researchers are worth their weight in gold. They are rare, but good research leaders need to bring in both categories into their research groups or institution if one wants to make a difference and become really successful at the highest level in a research environment. We have heard that many of our Nobel laureates has characters of both being pioneers and also being entrepreneurial. I have an example here, a person who I met a year ago. His name is Walter Munk. He got, we have an international prize called the Crawford Prize at the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. He got his prize in earth science. I think he has the distinction, so if we had had a Nobel Prize in earth science, he would have been a very good candidate. Anyhow, he is a professor at Scripps Institute of Oceanography in La Jolla, California. He is a pioneer and he's an entrepreneur, being able to conduct very complicated experiments with very large research teams and doing it on a global scale. He was awarded for his pioneering work on water circulations, tides, and waves in the oceans. A journalist asked during a press conference, "Tell us about your most important contribution." Walter, he said, "I rather talk about my failures, since they were many and most exciting in terms of being both challenging and risky, but full of wonderful expectations." He also said that he would never have been able to perform what he had done if he had not had a generous and patient financial supporter who had believed in him, who had trusted him. Walter Munk, he is 93 years old, and in his Crawford lecture he presented, in line with his personality, a very bold and challenging new project that he wanted to pursue. He used a stick, and there he's giving his lecture using his stick to point at what he wanted us to look at. Okay, so there is an enormous political interest in scientific research today. Why is it so? I think we can mention at least 4 reasons. And this is true both in advanced, developed, industrialized countries, as well as in countries at different developmental stage. And the reason why there is a high interest in research and innovation is that is an increasing political expectation that research and innovation will create prosperity and health. This is what we used to call developing knowledge-based economies. But there is also an increasing call for evidence-based decisions in different sectors of the societies. Research can help providing such evidence-based information. I mentioned the increasing global challenges that demand new solutions. We have increasing population, we have overexploitation of resources, we have the environmental issues, we have the health issues. I also think it's fair to mention that it is an increasing competition for talented researchers on a global scale, and that's an environment you are about to enter, being aware of. There are consequences of this, and that is basically impatience. One wants results quickly. And this has overall resulted in that free, curiosity-driven basic research is becoming marginalized when more and more emphasis is put on strategic and targeted research decided at higher political levels. We have also more and more pressure on us as scientists to be productive, and increasing demands for deliverables results in that risk-taking is reduced. That means we have to put more focus on safe and specialized research in order to meet the requirements within short to medium term. And I think the result of this is threatening in the way that it reduces the renewing or the creativity of scientific research when it comes to open up for the new opportunities that we need so much. So the message from this is that today we undermine the potential of scientific research worldwide as we put more and more emphasis on targeted and strategic applied research within established paradigms. Put more emphasis there than on curiosity-driven basic research with a higher potential to make new discoveries and open up for the new opportunities. So in setting science policy, one needs to consider the fact that these two types of research work with different goals and time perspectives. They are interdependent of each other, and neither of them can advance without the other. That is the message. Today, we are worldwide, as I view it, weakening the power of science by supporting targeted, strategic, applied research at the expense of basic research. At least we do so in Europe. And this is actually quite serious in a time when we really need to sharpen the instrument of scientific research. Furthermore, today we have a tremendous international bandwagon effect, where thousands of scientists all around the world look in the same directions. They flock around similar questions defined by very similar research strategies set at national levels. This has really resulted in what we would call incremental research. Incremental research is characterized by high competition between researchers, high productivity, and also relatively high quality of data, but with a relatively short best before date. And it occurs very much within established views and paradigms. Most of us do incremental research. I think that's unavoidable because we work out from the paradigms that we have. But this development, that means that the room for high-risk, long-term challenging science is steadily shrinking, as I have emphasized. And I think a rebalancing between incremental science with short-time perspectives towards more challenging, groundbreaking research with long-time perspective is needed in view of societal needs. In other words, our best scientists must be given the trust and resources to take risks and address more demanding questions. That is why we must strengthen the condition for those who want and have the capacity to pursue basic research of the highest distinction, aiming at making real breakthroughs in terms of discoveries and new understanding. And this is what I will concentrate on in the rest of my talk. As the former permanent secretary of the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences and vice chair of the Nobel Foundation, I represent the Nobel Prizes and a Nobel Prize awarding institution, the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences. The Nobel Prizes are internationally defined as the highest benchmark for quality, as we like to see it. It's a discovery, invention, or improvement of the greatest benefit for mankind that defines the Nobel Prizes. And before we embark on the question of what kind of research environment, funding, and organizational variables which facilitate major discoveries to occur, I will say a few words about the Nobel Prize. These are the Nobel Prize awarding institutions. It's the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, it's a Nobel Assembly at Karolinska Institute, Swedish Academy, and it's the Norwegian Nobel Committee. My academy is responsible for 2 Nobel Prizes. It's a Nobel Prize in Physics and a Nobel Prize in Chemistry. Since 1969, we have an additional prize in the family. It's Sveriges Riksbank's prize in memory of Alfred Nobel. That's a prize in economy. We don't call it a Nobel Prize, we call it a Nobel Memorial Prize. And the Karolinska, it takes care of the prize in physiology and medicine. Well, looking at Alfred Nobel's will, he defines, I think, the quality measures very well. And I wanted to read, you are all physicists, so you are not all physicists, there's some chemists also, but let's concentrate on the first 2. The third is chemistry. But if you read prizes to those who during the preceding year shall have conferred the greatest benefit to mankind. That's a strong word. And then it continues, person who shall have made the most important discovery or invention within the field of physics. And for chemistry, it's discovery or improvement. What I would like to emphasize here is it's not a lifetime achievement that is awarded by the Nobel Prize. It's a discovery, invention, or improvement. And also, it should have conferred the greatest benefit to mankind. And I think that's the highest international quality criterion you can think of. It's higher than the quality criterion given you by the peers in your own field. It's really the mankind that sets the criterion. So how do we identify groundbreaking contributions and those who have made them? Well, we have our Nobel Committee. We have a Nobel Committee in physics. It's composed of 6 or 7 or 8 people, all Swedes. They are constantly working on field reviews with focus on major breakthroughs in terms of discovery, improvement, innovation, and improvements. So I would say that my academy probably has the best combined knowledge at each time over the whole field of physics and chemistry, and really knows where the breakthroughs occurs, where breakthroughs are emerging, and we follow it very closely, month by month, basically, reviewing various subfields of the disciplines. So we have a pretty good background. Then we send out call for nominations to renowned research institutes, universities, prominent scientists, academy members that nominate scientists, and we get something in the range of 300 to 400 nominations every year. Then we have a matrix of this is the development of science, and then we put nominations on top of that. And then when we have identified, say, 5 areas where we see that here we really have breakthroughs, then the work is to identify those scientists who stand behind the achievements. So that's the matching between nominations and the field reviews. Notice here, we are actually awarding breakthroughs in science through the Nobel laureates that did the work. So what is required to qualify for a Nobel Prize? It should have opened new doors in science and simply changed the way we think about things. It should also have wide consequences, both scientific and social. And this is why we sometimes have to wait some time after a major discovery to see what kind of consequences it has for other fields of sciences and for innovation, improvements, technologies, and whatever. It's also said here that it should have been reported in publications. That's not really necessary, but I think it helps if we have good publication strategies. But if you think of Mr. Tanaka and his contribution to mass spectrometry, he did not publish his results in a high-profile journal, but still we discovered his contributions and gave him the Nobel Prize. You should notice that in our work, there is no national consideration whatsoever. It's not in our mind to think in those terms. During my time as permanent secretary, I got visits from ministers in different countries saying, well, we have so good scientists in our country, it would mean so much for us if we got a Nobel Prize. And then I said, yes, you have many good scientists in your country, but we are not just awarding good scientists, we are awarding major breakthroughs. And if it's scientists in your country who are behind it, they will certainly eventually be awarded. So that's the message. There is no national consideration whatsoever when it comes to the Nobel Prizes. The archives, we keep all work in our archives documented, and the archives are closed for 50 years before they are open for science historians. And I should say that, of course, many scientists or many discoveries, improvements, or inventions are worthy of a Nobel Prize, but sometimes it's difficult to identify the researchers behind the discovery. And theory is also difficult for us to award according to the statutes, and sometimes important theoretical work has to wait to receive the prize until experiments have caught up. And that was a typical example is the 2008 Physics Prize on Broken Symmetry by Nambu, Kobayashi, and Maskawa. So now, why have the Nobel Prizes become so prestigious? First of all, it's the first international prize, so it's over 100 years old. First prize in 1901 to Röntgen. So the prize has had time to establish itself. I think we have a pretty high quality on the prize work. And we have a very high criterion for the quality, namely consequences for mankind, as I have mentioned. Of course, the quality of the laureates, they are the best ambassadors for the prize. And I think you have heard many examples of that during this week. So through those individuals, we get recognition. I also think it's important that the Nobel Prize, it's not just physics and chemistry, it's also medicine, it's literature, and it's also peace. So the Nobel Prize means something. It might mean different things, but it means something for a large group of people in the world. Furthermore, I think we can write the advancement of physics over the last 100 years in terms of Nobel Prizes. So that also make the prize very important in that context. We have a very developed outreach activity. You can visit our webpage, nobelprize.org. We have something called Nobel Media, and we have a Nobel Museum that sets up exhibitions. We get a good media coverage, and we have also some royal glory, as you have seen. So this creates a broad public interest in the award ceremony and in the banquet that goes with the event. And I shall here show you a couple of pictures. This is what the setting looks like during the Nobel Prize ceremony. The Nobel laureates are sitting here, a royal family there, the prize committee is sitting behind. Three distinguished Japanese laureates. You recognize Professor Kobayashi, Professor Masukawa, and Professor Asami Osimura, chemistry laureate. And then we are all hungry, so we have a dinner together, a banquet in the city hall. And the long table in the middle here, that's for sort of the laureates and distinguished guests, and the rest of us sit there. So now to the next question. What is required by a research system? This is Alfred Nobel, by the way. What is required by a research system? What kind of research policy is required to develop such a quality in the research that really merits for a Nobel Prize or other highly prestigious international prizes that we have around the world? We have the Lasker Prize in medicine, we have the Crawford Prize, we have the Japan Prize, the Cosmos Prize, Abel Prize in mathematics, Kavli Prizes, Field Medal, and there are many, many more. Now you should notice, now we are talking about major discoveries, innovations or improvements that results in real breakthroughs, new solutions that prove to become of benefit to mankind. We are not talking about generally highly productive incremental science that follow the mainstream of research, but with relatively low risk. We are talking about research that really changed the way we think and understand about things. There is a sociologist in Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin in Madison, Roger Hollingworth. He has analyzed how major breakthroughs in biomedical science and in chemistry are either facilitated or hampered by the organizational context in which they occur. From his studies, we can of course not say that a particular organizational structure is needed for major discoveries to occur, since scientific breakthroughs actually are rather rare events. But one may, from his studies, still draw conclusions about where major discoveries are most likely to occur and where they are least likely to occur. So I have here listed 5 organizational concepts that facilitate the making of major discoveries. And having listened to the talks over this week, I think this very nicely summarizes what we have heard is required for making groundbreaking research. We need scientific diversity in the environment. We need a variety of interactive subdisciplines. We need highly qualified individuals with good training. We need individuals who are at the forefront of using new technologies. And we need theoreticians as well as experimentalists. Scientific diversity is extremely important. We need communication and we need integration. We need to bring together different cognitive perspectives through really strong interactions between individuals. We can have journal clubs together, we can have lunches together. Social interactions are important. Things that facilitate a dialogue between people or across disciplinary borders. What has not been talked so much about is leadership capacity. A research environment needs to have a good leader. A leader needs to have a very strategic vision for integrating diverse areas of science and at the same time provide focused research on really challenging, important topics. The leadership has to secure long-term funding. Very important, make strategic recruitments so you can maintain this kind of diversity, the necessary diversity in the requirement. And create an atmosphere there to foster a critical but nurturing thinking, nurturing environment. We need organizational adaptiveness. We need to process new knowledge among actors from different fields in order to open up for new ideas. We have heard that many times during the week. And then we need organizational flexibility. If an organization starts to idle, one needs to regroup and one needs to go for more important questions. Having said this, it's not so difficult to say what hampers making of major discoveries. It's too much differentiation, too much fragmentation into disciplines with sharp boundaries, too much delegation to sub-levels with too narrow perspectives. Recruitment to too low levels in an organization is really bad, because that just means prolonging what those who are active there now are doing. What kills creativity is hierarchical authority. So one needs to avoid centralized decisions making about research program, budget, and personnel. That has to be close to the activity. We need to avoid what I would call bureaucratic coordination. Rigid bureaucracy with standardized rules very often prevent the necessary flexibility that scientific research needs. And then finally, hyperdiversity, that's obvious because differentiation results in hyperdiversity. And when you do that, you lose communication between individuals. So that's that. Okay. Now, Hollingworth has, and also other who have studied this, have noticed that major discoveries tend to take place in organizations which are quite small. And again, small and interactive, while large research universities, although they may perform extremely well in terms of being highly productive, actually just occasionally produce breakthroughs. And they are different from those environments, small interactive environments that do produce major discoveries over and over again, which we have seen during the last 100 years of activity in the Nobel Prize operation. Hollingworth also notices during the 20th century, knowledge increasingly has become more complex, and as this has occurred, research organizations tend to have differentiated knowledge into more and more departments, subspecialties, and the like. And that's directly against building creative environments. And he has a statement here that I want you to read, which I think summarizes all of what I have said. Our research organizations have become increasingly fragmented. Scientists and scholars in large universities occupy very narrow niches. In these niches, small research teams with very similar background operate with a great deal of synergy, and this leads to a great deal of productivity. But if major discoveries are to occur, it's important that research teams have a great deal of scientific diversity. Major discoveries tend to occur in those settings where there is frequent and intense interaction among investigators from diverse fields of science. Organizations in which knowledge is very fragmented and differentiated in narrow niches are settings where major breakthroughs do not occur, even if the organizations are highly productive. End of quote. I come back to Gunnar ÖQUIST again. He has studied these issues more from an individual perspective, and he has studied how creativity and renewal is stimulated among individuals, being either scientists or artists. And his conclusion is, milieu of creativity therefore ought to be seen as places and institutions that attract human beings who possesses unique competence within different areas. It's the same message again. He really emphasizes the interactive meeting place. And he also, as I said, focuses very much on the individual in the creative process. And he also points at the role of the home and the school in awakening and developing the individual's creative capacity. He also emphasizes what I have been asked about during this week. He emphasizes that geographic mobility enhances creativity among individuals. And there are studies actually showing that mobility is a cornerstone for stimulating creativity. And I think if you listen to the talks, when you listen to the talks during this week, the Nobel laureates have worked in many different environments, and I think that has helped them in their creativity. There is a PhD thesis by Ola Tuvesen from London University. He has looked at Nobel laureates and how they have been mobile. And when we look at the Nobel Prizes in physics, chemistry, and life sciences, on average, a Nobel laureate has worked in 4.6 different environments, being universities or institutes, before receiving the Nobel Prize. Furthermore, a Nobel laureate has on average had 7.4 other Nobel laureates as colleagues during a career. So you see, environment is important. Somehow Nobel Prizes are contagious. In an environment where you produce research at this level, attract strong scientists, and the creativity make them excel in their research. So creativity for individuals is beside training and whatever knowledge. To get it out, it's really very much an issue of the social environment in which the individual works. So knowledge and interaction, exchange of knowledge and ideas, that seems to be the key element for shaping creative environments that are brave enough to address important, groundbreaking questions, also having a fair chance to make a discovery, innovation, or improvement that may merit for a Nobel Prize. Well, I would like, since this is about art and science, I would like to show you one more thing. My academy also have a prize called the Rolf Schock Prize. And it's a collaboration between the Royal Academy of Science and the Royal Academies for Music and for Fine Art. And the name of the prize is after the donor. This prize awards eminent achievements in mathematics, philosophy, visual art, and music. And it's a focus on creativity. The 2008 prize, you see I'm standing in the middle and the laureates are sitting beside me. The 2008 laureates are from, if you look from the left, it is mathematician Andre Semeredi. In philosophy, the next is Thomas Nagel. In visual art, it's Mona Hattem. And in music, it's Gideon Kremer. And I chaired a press conference at this occasion. And when the question from the journalists started to fade out, I had to ask something. So I asked what new fast means of communication and interaction on the internet meant for their work in science and art. I was a little bit surprised by the answer, because I think interaction and dialogue is very important for the creativity. But they emphasize one thing that is also important to consider when you are in a creative environment, because they said it means nothing. They instead emphasize, all four of them emphasize, that time was the most important for the creative process to develop. And I think these laureates, they have an important message here. In a creative environment with a good dialogue, good interaction, it doesn't come over the day. You need time for the creative process to develop. So if they are right, and I think they are, the increasing demand to deliver in the short to medium term, I think that undermines creativity and quality of scientific research. So the prevailing schemes with competitive short-term project funding, that might produce productive research, but hardly what we call breakthroughs. Long-term perspective is an important prerequisite for groundbreaking research to develop. We need to simply put trust in our best researchers. Well, I now reached the end of my talk, and I would like to finish to addressing you who are still young and want to do a scientific career. So from what I have said, we can just hope that your school and upbringing has not only given you knowledge, but also awakened and developed your creativity by using your knowledge. In addition, to maximize your scientific career, you should, in the next phase of your career, look for postdoc training in nurturing, interactive environments where people are encouraged to engage in high-risk research, not being hindered in their research by having to continuously prove themselves by applying for research grants all the time. You should avoid environments where you become a workforce to help your supervisor to produce results of research that are good enough to merit for an extension of the grant. In such an environment, you may be productive, but do not expect to be part of a major scientific breakthrough. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. ÖQUIST. Now I would like to give a microphone to Dr. Takuji Okamoto, Associate Professor of Department of History and Philosophy of Science, Graduate School of Arts and Sciences, the University of Tokyo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we would like to move to the question and answer session. Does anyone have any question or comment? Yes, please.
Thank you, sir, for a wonderful talk. I'm Shreyas from India, and my question is with reference to the Rolf Schock Prize. I want to ask whether the nature of creativity in the humanities and the nature of creativity in science are the same, or are they different? Because in the humanities, in say something like music, a lot of emphasis is given on spontaneity. So even if the idea has crystallized inside the musician's mind for a long time, the final exposition depends on spontaneity. Whereas in science, it's not enough to merely throw out ideas. You have to come up with innovative ways to execute your ideas as well. So is there a fundamental difference between the two?
I don't know if I can answer that, but research that has been done on how to foster creativity, the mechanism for developing creativity seems to be the same in science and art and in culture. And what the studies come down to, that is the meeting place, where people with different background, with different experience, with different knowledge meet and interact. That is where creativity can develop best. So I think the basics for creativity is the same irrespective of fields. I was a little bit surprised when they didn't think that internet was useful. I think it is useful for us because it is a good place for communicating with other scientists around the world. So I think we should use internet to enhance the creative process. But their message was that we also need time to think and reflect. And that I think is very important also. Maybe you have an answer as being a science historian, if there are differences in the creative process between science and art.
Yes, that's probably. But you're talking about the musicians, players or composers?
No, not necessarily musicians. I'm talking about creativity in the humanities and creativity in science.
Humanities also takes time, to be creative. You understand that,
Yes.
Musicians, if you think about the players, it seems like they play spontaneously. Reflecting something that comes out directly, but they need practice. That takes time. And composers, they need time to make their ideas expressive. So it's the same thing for humanities, also social sciences.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other comments or questions? Okay, please.
Thank you for your talk, sir, about the Nobel Prize and how quality work is done in general. I have a couple of questions. By the way, I'm Gaurav from India. Firstly, you mentioned that Nobel laureate on an average had 7.4 other Nobel laureates as colleagues. Was this before or after they won the prize?
Well, during a life career of a Nobel laureate has interacted with 7.4 other Nobel laureates in a research environment where he or she is active. And when a Nobel laureate receives the prize, he or she has worked alongside 7 other Nobel laureates that has been in the environments.
I have another question.
This is, of course, just statistics, but I think it's interesting to see that interactions at that level of exchange of ideas seem to be contagious and encourage people to think bravely.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for that answer, sir. There's a question that Nobel Prize winners do have considerable influence on the policy making in their local organizations and their countries. So, in order to nurture talent and fundamental curiosity in basic research among children, is there some work or what kind of work would you recommend should go on? Because for a country or for an organization to invest in such a direction might mean losing the competitive edge in the world, at least temporarily. So how do you think can you inspire, or how do you think can a scientist inspire his local governments or organizations he works in to take significant steps in these directions?
Well, I think that a science policy of a nation need to cover it all. You need to have everything from basic groundbreaking research to more targeted applied strategic research, over innovation to products, whatever. You need to have the whole scale. But I would think that if you, in a developing country, want to build a scientific environment, build research by establishing university and institute or so, you have to start with what's there. And I think the first goal should be to, what I would say, reach the research front, the front of knowledge. Once you have reached where the front is, then you can start to ask questions beyond that. So I think it's a developmental process. But when I argue for basic research, I don't argue in the way that it is more important for the more applied research. Both are very important, and I think it's a strong message that, you know, we said the Nobel Prize of most significant or importance for mankind. The major discovery has to be developed into something that is meaningful for people, either in the term of understanding or in terms of new innovation. You need a whole spectrum if you shall really create environments to build strong science-based societies.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer.
Okay, yes, please.
I have a question about, I agree with you with the fact that we have to recognize, acknowledge breakthrough in science. But why is the Nobel Prize only awarded to people alive? Isn't it important also for the scientific community to acknowledge breakthrough, even if the people at the beginning are not
You take
alive?
the question one more time. I didn't get it. Why?
Why don't you acknowledge breakthrough people that are not alive anymore?
We don't award those who have passed away.
Yes.
No. we don't.
Why? Why? Because breakthrough can be made by people who are...
Well, it's the will that says that it should go to individuals that has made the most important contributions to mankind. It's actually said the last year. We don't follow that anymore because it takes time to prove the significance and the impact of a major discovery or invention. But I would say that's our interpretation of the will. We give it to living scientists. We don't award scientists after their death. You may discuss whether this is a good or bad thing, but there are many good living scientists who are worthy of the award. And I think we can just regret that sometimes we wait too long that a scientist that should have had the prize has passed away. It's part of life. Well, we don't know if we live tomorrow. We hope we do it, but we don't for sure know. So the world is an unsafe place in a way.
Yes, please.
Well, I sort of have more of a comment on that because, I mean, I would imagine that if a prize is awarded, I mean, Nobel laureates, once they receive the prize, would be expected to play some role in society. Now, if I were to give or you were to give the Nobel Prize to Isaac Newton, I don't think it would serve any purpose in today's world. So, I think it's necessary to award the prize to people who are living so that they can come and they can discuss with young students like all of us, and in general, many people would benefit.
That's a very good point. Very good point.
Okay. Any other questions or any other comments? Maybe. Okay. Good. Please.
If the Nobel Prize, if the large corporation have the chance to win the Nobel Prize, such as the corporation in LGC and the RIC experiment, who will you give to?
You must repeat that. I can't hear what you say. I come closer.
I mean, if the large corporation, such as the LGC corporation and the RIC corporation, could have a chance to win the Nobel Prize in physics, who will you give to?
Weak calculation. Could you? What topic are you talking about?
The large collaboration.
Oh, collaboration. Okay.
Yeah, collaboration.
Collaboration. Yes.
If there are a lot of people in the collaboration.
Oh, yeah, I see. Okay. Well, that's a problem, and this is discussed. We heard about high-end physics here. There's huge collaborations.
Yeah.
And of course, one can discuss to also award organizations that sort of work in a very integrated way. Well, so far we have decided not to award organizations. We have, in the will it's actually said person, and it actually points at one individual to be awarded. We have interpreted that to three, and that is the upper limit. And there are certainly areas that are worthy a Nobel Prize, but it has been difficult to identify those who really made the most significant experiment for that breakthrough. So far, it's only three. That's the optimum. That's the maximum.
Okay, the next one is going to be the last question or comment. Does anyone have any question or comment? Okay, that person.
I'm Wai Chen from Taiwan. We know you are a biologist. I'm just curious, how do you communicate with other science from a different field and persuade your topic is important? Because sometimes they don't think your topic is important. They might not be interested in your topic. Yeah. So how to communicate with each other?
This is an important question. Yes, I'm a biologist. As a biologist, I am of course not involved in the reviewing process for selecting physics or chemistry laureates. I'm not qualified for that. My responsibility was more to oversee that we had an organization and that we had qualified people in the various committees to do this properly. But the general questions, how you communicate across disciplines, I think that's an extremely important issue. We talk about popularization of science, and we usually, when we do that, we usually think of reaching out to the broader public. But I think it's just as important that we, as scientists communicating with each other, use and try to be simple and principled in our explanation, not try to show off by sort of by using words that the person you are talking to don't understand what it is. So I think we need, and I think we need to improve on this, the language for communicating across disciplines. I see this is a problem in my own academy. And you know, we invite distinguished scientists to come and give lectures. And I send a letter to these people who come to Stockholm, telling them that you should have a level of your talk so you can reach out to college students. That's the level you should have if you want to reach scientists from other disciplines. Then, of course, in your talk, you can use maybe 10, 15 minutes to go a little bit deeper and talk to those who are central in your field. But it's really important to convey the message in a way so the audience understand, and so you can reach out to an individual in another field and get a qualified response back, so you can have a discussion.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This concludes the session, and thank you very much again.
Thank you, Dr. Okamoto, as well, and thank you for questions. That concludes today's morning lecture program. Now, please take lunch in room Zuiko. Team presentation will begin after lunch at 2 o'clock in this room. Please be punctual. Thank you.